soon.
Yeah. Yeah, correct.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Start the recording of the stream.
Okay. Let's go. Recording. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of the East Franklinton Review Board to order. Staff, swear or affirm statements you will make today will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
Stephanie Kinsler. She's
Not Stan. Okay, fair enough. All right, call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Here.
Mr. Manfres,
Present.
Mr. Oberly,
Here.
Mr. Way,
Here.
Mr. Bush will not be joining, and Mr. Noppi.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Have a quorum, thank you. Okay, let's get to it. So, everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any changes, corrections? Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Seconded.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfres,
Approve. Abstain.
Mr. Way,
Abstain.
Mr. Noppi.
Approve.
So we have one continued application today. It is EF 2205-001, 466 West State Street. The applicant is Jessica Shuren, Gravity 2 Mid-Rise LLC, and Kaufman Development are the owners. Staff report, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself.
Mr. Wade is recusing himself, as is Mr. Noppi.
Thank you.
Application EF 22-05001 for 466 West State Street. This is a request for action for the Salazzo building for exterior building alterations. 466 West State is the Salazzo building in the West Broad Street subdistrict. The applicant is seeking approval for various exterior building alterations, including for the south elevation, which is going to be the front of the building, new brake metal fascia in iron ore, create a new 26-foot 6-inch high by 18-foot 11.75-inch wide opening in the historic rusticated ashlar limestone for a new storefront and door system, new weathered steel C-shaped canopy, and a new weathering steel sunshade over new storefront windows above the new canopy. Remove existing overhead door and cinder block addition and replace with new aluminum and glass storefront windows and door and existing opening. New weathering steel fascia on cinder block addition. New 7-foot 9-inch high fence with painted steel posts and weathering steel horizontals. New install 2 new wall sconces and install 2 new in-ground wall wash light fixtures. For the north elevation, which is the rear, a new 3-foot 4-inch wide by 7-foot 4-inch high painted steel service door. New weathering steel fascia on cinder block addition. New mechanical louvers and existing opening. Infilling the existing 10-foot 1-inch wide by 8-foot 8-inch tall opening in the ashlar limestone portion with cinder block, and the installation of 4 new wall sconces. On the east elevation, which is the side interior to the project, the applicant is proposing to soda blast and seal the existing cinder block with siloxane PD. New aluminum and glass storefront window with muntins and existing opening. New 3-foot 4-inch wide by 7-foot 4-inch tall door. New aluminum and glass storefront windows and door and existing opening. And then the installation of 3 new wall sconces. And then on the west elevation, which is the side facing the street, 2 new downlit protruding weathered steel single frame windows and existing openings. removal of existing entry door and conversion to a new 7-foot 6-inch wide by 10-foot 4-inch high downlit protruding weathered steel single frame window. New iron ore colored standing seam metal roofing to partially cover existing rusticated asphalt limestone. All masonry is to be cleaned and treated with water repellent as follows. Graffiti to be removed using EnviroClean Seep Strip. Applicant proposes soda blasting as an alternate if chemical removers do not work. Limestone and concrete masonry to be cleaned using EnviroClean Reclaim and SureClean Limestone and Masonry Afterwash. SureClean Weather Seal Natural Stone Treatment to be used on limestone as a water repellent. SureClean Weather Seal Siloxane PUD to be used on concrete masonry as water repellent. Replace asphalt shingle roof with new iron ore colored standing seam metal roof. New integral gutters and downspouts. Rooftop mechanical will be screened. New black membrane roof on cinder block addition. Sandblast and clear coat existing gantry. Existing street trees along McDowell Street are being removed. The applicant previously came before the board in May 2022. At that meeting, the board encouraged the applicant to consider an alternate design for the west elevation that would allow for some of the cut face limestone and date stone to be visible, as well as inclusion of a gravel stop on the rubber roof portion to complement the proposed metal roofing on the main building. The only changes from the May 2022 application are to the west elevation. A tenant has not yet been identified for the space. The applicant does plan on returning for landscaping and signage. The submittal includes site plan, elevations, rendering, and material specification and cut sheets. The proposal is generally inconsistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. Plan recommends historic and other contributing buildings should be preserved to the extent possible. The proposed design dramatically alters the historic fabric of the building. Further, the plan recommends the inclusion of street trees in consultation with the city forester. As such, staff recommends continuing the application to allow for further refinement of the project to better align with applicable plan guidelines and historic preservation best practices.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? If not, would the applicant step forward, please?
Okay, somebody will open.
Thanks.
Okay, identify yourselves for the record, please.
Jessica Sharon, Kaufman Development.
Joe Lomas, Grad Architects.
Okay, and for both of you, do you swear or affirm the statements you're about to make and the testimony you're about to give be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Okay. Proceed, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. I missed you all last month, but thank you for the time last month and for hearing us again. As Stephanie mentioned, the only significant change, or really the only actual change, is to that west elevation where we had the standing seam. Heard feedback. I think was the right feedback, obviously. We're pulling that standing seam south so that you're exposing more of that limestone that was originally there, including that really cool 1925 placard. And where we cut it, actually, we think makes a lot of sense because there's an existing opening there and we'd be doing some really odd infill anyways. And that infill condition we think would kind of distract from what's going on in the rest of the space. So wanted to kind of carry some of the new invigorated piece of the building from the south to the west and from the roof down, but wanted to preserve some of that limestone. So we thought this was a really good balance of covering up what would be an odd architectural detail, while also kind of balancing the old and the new. And Bart, I know you were not here, I think, for the last meeting. So if there's anything we need to jump back on, we're happy to do so. But that was really the only change in response to the feedback we received.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
No, I think it looks great. I appreciate you taking recommendation into consideration and making a couple of these changes. I think your design looks great. I don't have any issues with it as
My only question would be the south facade. The stone that you're showing on the main building, not the
block addition.
block addition. What is that stone? Is it Is it to
I'm not
match?
an expert, but it appears to me that it's a limestone it's a kind of ashlar coursing,
Yeah,
various different course heights across it, and it's got a rusticated finish to it.
so that's
Rest
existing,
corners.
that's existing
That's
stone
existing
that you're
We're
gonna
talking about the
reuse or
Yeah,
cut
look,
back.
look at the front page, there's a tiny picture.
Yeah.
That's the existing.
Oh, right, and I know the building. I guess I'm just asking because the south elevation is the most modernized. But you have the kind of flanking stone on the two sides. That's existing, or you're gonna reuse the stone in some?
We'll enlarge the opening, basically, we're gonna,
Yeah,
you know,
so the
widen
stone,
and
that
cut
stone
the-
is not, not a new facade, that is
existing.
a modified, yeah.
Steel portal frame gets installed, et cetera. And regarding the comment on the gravel stuff, it's not an intention to detail that would ultimately be necessary to have a gravel stop around that middle bay eastern portion there, but by all means, we would have a detail that provides a drip edge and gravel stop.
I agree, I think it looks good.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, if the board so chooses to move forward with approving the application, I would recommend conditions.
Okay.
Just because we don't have complete application. So staff's recommended conditions would be that they would return for landscaping, that they show on the drawings that the metal paneling be attached through the mortar joints instead of through the base of the limestone. And then that they work with the city forester on street trees along McDowell and State.
Okay, that's a mouthful. I'm not sure I can repeat it. Can I say what she said? Okay. Conditions as, okay, so, all right, I'll make the motion. Move we approve the application subject to the conditions articulated by staff.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfres,
Approve.
and Mr. Overly.
Approve.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Jessica, we weren't gonna approve anything without you here.
Oh my gosh, I've heard. That you almost kicked
Just
me
not
out.
right, is it?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but I might be gone for the next one too, so
Don't bring it to us, bring it to your staff.
I already did. That was fun.
Okay, new applications. Next this first new application is EF 22-06001. Address is 501 West Broad Street, Gravity 3. Jessica Shure is the applicant. Gravity Project 3 LLC is the owner. Staff report, please.
Thank you. EF 22-06001, 501 West Broad Street. This is the landscaping application for Gravity 3. The applicant is requesting review and action for landscaping at the Gravity 3 mixed-use development located within the West Broad Street subdistrict. The proposal includes landscape and hardscape along the May Avenue, McDowell Street, and Broad Street frontages, as well as for the pocket park with bicycle parking, pet relief area, and seating, as well as the amenity deck that features a pool, heated spa, full tub, shade structure, and various seating options. The new construction, demolition of 479 and 491 West Broad, as well as 55 McDowell, and the lot combination of 4 parcels, plus city vacation of the alley between May and McDowell Street were all previously approved. The applicant will return for approval of lighting, signage, and graphics, as well as materials, including the faux greenery exterior elements. The submittal includes landscape plans and materials. The proposal is consistent with the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends landscaping materials and design should enhance structures, create and define public and private space, provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and environmental benefits. The landscaping plan as presented is in line with these recommendations. Staff notes that some lighting is shown on the drawings, but is not a part of this application. The applicant intends to return for approval of the entire lighting plan. Staff recommends approval without conditions.
And
Thank you.
one quick thing, is Chris allowed back in for this one? I can't remember if he accuses himself for this one.
No, Chris,
Yeah.
Chris Nappy is not involved in this.
I
I
don't,
believe he's recused himself from other gravity three things.
I might be just confusing myself.
You go,
So does Chris work with Kim?
no,
No, okay. Let's bring Chris back in then.
Maybe, yeah,
let's ask him.
Yeah. sorry, before we got too far. I am, well, in the meantime.
Did get the glossies last time, didn't they? Don't remember your staff bringing the glossies last time.
Oh.
I think that's just a cut of
They, when I was gone, they didn't bring it?
At the whole
the whole thing, yeah.
Okay. Okay, Chris, you can take a look at the staff report on this. It's just articulated.
Yes. So Chris, in some, I can reread it if you'd like, but in summary, staff's noted that this plan is consistent with the plan recommendations and does recommend approval without condition. Noting that the applicant will be returning for lighting, signage, and graphics, as well as materials, including some of the faux greenery elements that we've seen on the renderings in the past.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any questions for staff? If not, floor is yours, Jessica.
We need to.
I'm sorry, I got one man to, I have one man to swear in. State your name, please.
My name is Dan Erlinson with HPLA Landscape Architects.
Okay, thank you. And do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Okay, now we're good.
Great, thank you very much. As Dan just introduced himself, he's our landscape architect on the project. We presented this conceptually, I believe, back in April and wanted to bring it back for final approval. We've been sectioning these things off so that we could get good feedback and focus on each piece. And I'm confident that the next presentation will present the whole picture, but wanted to just focus on the landscape here. And as Stephanie mentioned, nothing too out of the ordinary here. We have focused on that park that we've talked about a little bit, moved some of the service away from the tenants to the south of the project and really made it a really welcoming and inviting experience. And then we've got a pretty generous sidewalk path, and we've got some green elements that border our garage, and we think those are really important to the overall experience. And then you can see some of the hardscape we're proposing. We've got bike parking and furnishings in the park. And so really just wanted to paint a complete picture of what's happening on the ground level with landscape and hardscape. And then because you can see just a portion of it probably from a certain angle of that pool terrace that's on the existing A.B. Farrow building, we wanted to present that as well. And as Stephanie mentioned, it's a pretty standard pool, but we also have a hot tub and a cold plunge element to it. And that's something we're carrying forward from our project in the short note as well. And we're really excited to bring all these elements to this project, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
What are the proposed street trees along May?
So we're working with the city currently on that. We are showing it on the plan, and when we submitted this, we had it on our plan, and we've since gotten feedback on the site compliance process that there might not be enough room for the street trees. So we can speak to what we're proposing now, and then ultimately it's going to be working with the city and the city forester to determine, like, do we have enough space? Do they just have to be smaller?
Right. We have an alternate, larger and smaller tree, the shag bush and the basswood, in the planting grounds now. And they're about 5 feet wide. I feel like that's going to be big enough to accommodate, but we have to wait for final approval from the city, whether they feel the same way.
And then we are showing it keeping the existing trees that border the A.B. Farrow building, which I think are fairly new.
Yeah, there's 5 of them.
So I think my only thought there is that the spacing of the trees somehow complement the patterning of the building, you know, that be, like the numbers and the type and all of that would be, sounds good, but I would just see if maybe you could pay attention to the relationship between them and the architecture.
Like the balconies, kind
Yep.
of where we have them. Okay,
Yep.
that's great feedback.
Yeah, we could show that on elevation.
Yeah. But I think it looks good. Any other comments? I like the pet relief area.
Oh, we'll have to have that.
It's gonna be a lot of use.
Yeah, it is.
I have
And
that
areas.
cute little nook in the corner there.
Okay, Chris, any questions?
Looks good.
No, I think everything looks good. I agree with I think elevations, making sure that trees don't hinder but work with the architectural elements on the vertical elevations of the building, I think makes a lot of sense.
Okay, do that. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve is submitted.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the application as submitted. Stephanie, call the roll, please.
Quick question, so the request for elevations is just a suggestion, it's not.
It's a suggestion. I'm sure they're gonna work that through. I feel
Okay.
confident with the process.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve as submitted by Mr. Overly, seconded by Mr. Napi, is that correct? Okay. Mr. Fergus,
Approved.
Mr. Manfres,
Approve.
Mr. Overly,
Approve.
and Mr. Napi.
Approve.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next month. Oh, not you, I guess. You're going on
Maybe
vacation.
not.
And Stephanie,
Thank you so much. Can you send Kim back in?
So you're out.
I think Chris or Kim comes back in.
Jessica, will you send Kim back in when you?
Yeah. I will.
Barry notes that Bart Overly had to leave the meeting. But Mr. Way will be back in and we have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay, the next application is EF 2206-002. The address is 567 West Broad Street. The applicant is Colin Brinkman, and the owner is Lifelong Learning Administrative Corporation. Stephanie, call roll, please. Wrong thing. I'm not on my game today. It's got to be the staff report, please.
EF 2206-002 for 567 West Broad Street. This is a graphics and signage application. The applicant is requesting review and action on 2 wall signs. The proposal includes a cabinet sign, which is on the northeast corner of the building, which would be a new 5 foot 10 inch wide by 3 foot 10 inch tall base in the existing sign cabinet. The sign would be black cut vinyl face over a flat white polycarbonate with vinyl lettering. It says "Hi" in the logo. And the cabinet would be lit internally with new LED lighting. Additionally, they're proposing a Raceway mounted channel letter sign on the north elevation in the brick band. This would be a new 11 foot and 5/8 inch wide by 2 foot 2 inch tall wall sign. The channel letters would be 3-inch black channels with black trim cap with colored vinyl overlays. The tagline would be white acrylic panel with black vinyl lettering. The channel letters and the tagline would be mounted to a raceway, which will be attached to the building. There will be an extruded aluminum raceway that will be painted to match the brick. And then the sign will be internally illuminated with white LEDs. The applicant previously received approval for the requested change of use at the April 2022 EFRD meeting and the architecture at the May 2022 meeting. The submittal includes a site plan and specifications for the proposed signs. The proposal is generally inconsistent with the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends that a single tenant building should have 1 projecting sign and either 1 wall sign or 1 awning sign. The applicant is proposing 2 wall signs. Further, the plan recommends that signage should not obscure any significant architectural elements and that the installation should not permanently alter or damage the building. The proposed location for the Raceway sign obscures an architectural element of the building and could be unnecessarily damaging to the historic masonry. Finally, the plan states that internally illuminated box cabinet signs are not appropriate. The applicant is proposing to reface an existing box sign. Staff supports the box sign portion of the proposal as the cabinet is existing. Staff could support 2 wall signs on the building if the Raceway sign was relocated over the west entry, where a second wall sign would have been historically, and attached to the metal paneling instead of the masonry. Staff's recommendation is to continue the application.
Any questions for staff?
So to clarify that last point about relocating the sign over the west entry, so it's currently centered on the building and staff's recommending it be moved over above the doorway.
Yes, so instead of being mounted to the brick, it would be attached to that metal that's over that west entry.
Stephanie, you don't happen to have a picture of that elevation?
From last month.
Yeah. I'm just trying to put that with. Oh,
Very helpful. Thank you.
trying to put it in context with what it would staff it.
Yeah, that'd be the second one there.
Billy, you want to swear him in?
I will, as soon as I. Okay, here you go. All right, please identify yourself.
Colin Brinkman.
And Colin, you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
I did.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, so my client here, it sounds like you guys have worked with them recently. They're just trying to get some signage for their new school. I guess the simple one first and the more non-complex one would be the one over the face replacement with the existing illuminated sign cabinet. Simply, we just want to put a new face in there over the entryway and, retrofit it with new LEDs. And then for the channel letter wall sign, ideally, we do want to have it installed on that masonry brick. We did put on a raceway to minimize the amount of penetrations. There'd probably be about 6 total penetrations with 3/8 diameter masonry anchors. And we would do our best to install within the mortar joints within the brick wall there. And again, those are just facelit channel letters mounted to a raceway. And that's kind of the route we're wanting to go for this project.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Is this sheet here indicative of kind of where you wanted it to go on the elevation on Broad Street?
Correct. Yes.
And I like staff's opinion of moving it further west with the existing sign being on the 45 on the corner, this one being facing Broad. You have 2 signs that are readily seen from Broad, kind of really close to each other. I think moving it down to the other portion makes a lot of sense. Those 2 birds with one stone if it goes through the metal and not the brick, and helps staff.
I guess the question is why do you want it there?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. The big issue that my client's having with this is that that's not going to be a main entry point. That door's not going to be an entryway. So they want to avoid confusion of having people go to that door. So that's the main reason they didn't want to have it over the metal. And we're kind of proposing it on the brick there. Just to avoid any confusion for any pedestrian or any trying to locate the building.
From a precedential standpoint, I note that plan discourages the use of internally lit signs. Now, there's an existing sign, kind of a non-conforming use of sorts, which is fine. But were we to approve the new sign being internally lit, that would set a precedent for future development in the area that we may not want to set.
The reuse of the corner or this
No,
sign
this,
here?
this new sign, not the reuse of the corner.
I don't think, I can pull it up. I don't think the plan discourages internally illuminated signs in general. It discourages internally illuminated box signs
Okay,
specifically. So that's where we called that out and said that we would be okay because it's already there. But if they were proposing a brand new one, we would say no.
Okay, so you're okay with it. Staff is okay and the plan's okay with this type of internally illuminated sign?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I withdraw my comment. So, tease
So
that
that-
out.
Can I just confirm that, so the corner is the main entry to the building, right?
Correct.
Correct. And the other one is locked, not used, or?
It will not be used.
It still looks like it's still a door though, right?
Correct. Yeah, maybe like an emergency exit, but not like a public exit. Yes.
I would defer probably to you, Kim, a little more. But we just approved the Salazzo building with metal going over top of existing brick. I think if there's 6 masonry anchors in this raceway that's behind, and those are put into mortar joints, I don't see that would be negatively affecting the already fairly well-worn existing brick. I don't see how that would be long-term negatively affecting it where it is, but aesthetically, putting it that close to the other box sign would be probably my bigger concern.
So if you're asking my feeling about it, when I realized that this corner sign is already there, right? The box is already there. I feel like that, maybe it's the design, the text, the colors is really overwhelming. And I can't remember what it was before, but it's really overwhelming that very small space. I actually like the sign on brick. I think if it was just that would be a really nice kind of outcome. And so I guess and again, I think what I would do is I try to center it over that bank of windows, so it looks like it's kind of off center right now.
Moved a little bit to the east.
I think that looks very nice, and I think the brick kind of helps to soften the brightness of the colors and stuff. But the corner one is with a black background and some very bright colors, it's overwhelming.
It will match the new metal that is on that front corner with kind of an iron ore color, I think. At least the iron.
Oh, can you pass that back?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just looking at the sign, I wasn't looking at the thing.
They highlighted it red there, but I think if that is a gray or iron ore color to match the new siding on that 45, it won't show as much of a big black backlit sign as so much as. And at night is the idea that at night when that is lit, that sign, the only thing that will shine through would be the lettering and the logo and not the black new screen on that box sign.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So the only thing that would light up would be the lettering and the logo up top. Correct.
And you're giving us a Photoshop image of it's gonna look different. Kind of than that. Because, you've got a very high resolution image that has very bright colors, but I'm assuming it would be much more subdued with that, that box type environment with the type of light that you might have behind it. Is that a fair statement?
I would say so. Yeah. It's, yeah, I mean, the main thing there was, with the black overlay, there would no light would penetrate that. It would just, come through the.
And this is the elevation that was approved last month.
I guess I would ask the applicant, would you be open to just one sign on the brick and not doing a corner sign?
Yeah.
You're representing the applicant, right?
Yeah, I can inquire about it. But most definitely. As far as the one on the 45 degree angle, I mean, if we went non-illuminated, would that be okay?
So she's showing it right here. That metal 2 is a dark bronze, so it'll be, almost a black finish. If they painted the cabinet and painted the exterior of that face of the sign, that same dark bronze color, so that everything matched, when the light was on, all you would see would be the logo and the lettering. You wouldn't see any other lighting.
I'm going with what the applicant says, that's not an entrance, so I think it's from a wayfinding standpoint, you don't really want
The
the.
corner is the entrance.
No, she's talking about the corner.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this,
Yeah.
so that other sign, over the other end, the other photo. Entrance. This, I thought you were talking about this one.
No, what is the purpose of that red? Is that showing where she had recommended it going?
Correct. Yes.
And I agree that, you know, that's, I don't mind the sign on the brick, kind of with a broad straight base, identifying the project.
I agree with
I
you.
agree that having the one in the corner, it's very close together, it's just gonna be a lot. And maybe it's actually the size of the corner sign, because you're trying to fill an existing box. Maybe part of it, maybe it's something, but then you're doing a different box.
Well, that's what I was trying to mention to your point of if there's nothing coming through the box where the black is shown currently,
Yeah, okay,
and the black, and what they're showing here is the blue
right,
is a dark bronze, where it is showing black. The cabinet and the black face is all a dark bronze matching. It will feel more like a corner with a letter sign than it will a box sign. It's still a box sign, it's still reusing a box sign, but it's not going to illuminate that whole 4x5 box.
I'm more going with the two sides being very close together, and just create busyness.
I'm not an architect. I don't play one on TV. But does it matter that that 45-degree angle also happens to be the main entrance to the building? And at least a small sign would more effectively delineate the entrance.
So you said a small sign, that's where I was going, is if it's
Okay.
something less.
Something less.
What if,
The plan does allow for two signs, it's just not two wall signs. So I think Colin and I had discussed perhaps that at that corner, maybe that's a projecting sign that, you know, sticks out and has the flex logo.
Blade sign.
Yes.
Or I was even thinking if it was the building number on it. And just keep it really simple, building number, and then the main signs on the side.
So they can have two signs. There is language in the plan that could be interpreted as not supporting the cabinet sign, even though it's existing. The plan does not recommend two wall signs. It's a wall sign and either an awning sign or a projecting sign. So obviously you may do with that what you wish.
For the wall sign, I mean, I know for the one, not the 45-degree angle, but the channel letter sign, I mean, I think my client would be okay with possibly having, if you guys are concerned about being it too close to that main entry door, I mean, I definitely think they would be okay with pushing it down that brick wall a little bit if you guys do think it is a little bit too close together. I don't think they're married maybe to that location, but I can definitely inquire about
I
it.
hope that, Kim, to your point, if it stays in that location, I agree with moving it actually closer to the corner so it is lined over the windows a little better.
Yeah. Because then it's moving to the main entrance, right? It's close to it, so.
And they're trying to reuse the cab. I get understanding reusing the box from a cost standpoint. Would you feel better about maybe making the logo bigger on the box and taking the lettering away so that the only thing that shows at night would be the larger logo with the address? So maybe it has the address on the box with the logo, and then the sign is on the brick, so it delineates, it's a little different, same sign isn't so close to each other.
And maybe, yeah, I think that could be an option, and maybe it's it's just the font size of the thing, you know. If it was scaled down, it became something that was more, it feels like the whole thing is, the whole scale of it seems out of proportion to, you know, it's the black box sitting on the other square, and the size of the letter in reference to all of that, it seems proportionally like you just scaled the whole thing down, so it was smaller on the corner. That might be.
With a new box.
Then you might be able to keep the box there. You just have more black, right? Black background. then it's more like like the wall sign identifies the building, and that sign should identify the entrance, right? And now right, they're competing, right? They're both trying to do both.
So your recommendation would be for a logo and then whatever the address is, Broad Street.
Yeah, I don't want to design it, but I think if it just scales down, you could, everything that's there, just like half the size. So it's much more understated.
This logo?
Where do we stop parsing an existing sign with a new sign? And if they leave the box, are you guys more inclined to say it's existing? If they replace the block box with something smaller, is it?
That was gonna be my question, was in talking about scaling it down. Could you clarify if you mean in the existing box or replacing with a smaller box?
I'm assuming that if the existing box stays there, then everything's copacetic, right? So I say leave the box, just scale the logo and the text, the font size down within it. So it becomes literally half the size, I think. Just something that's more, the way that I look at it is that sign is related to the entry into that corner. And then, which is, it's more down to human scale, whereas the sign on the building is from an automobile standpoint, right? You want to see it moving up and down Broad Street. So I just think because they're working within the existing box, it's causing them to want to fill it up, take advantage of that space, when I think that's the wrong direction. It wants to be smaller and more understated, and just about the entrance. That was my recommendation.
Anyone, comments?
I also think that this view right here, if it was to show the corner as has been previously approved with the new metal and the new dark bronze color, and the sign has the dark bronze on it, I think that would additionally help.
It's like show it in that elevation, don't show it on the existing building.
Yeah, I mean,
That doesn't show the sign.
right.
So it's hard to put it in context with the different materials and colors.
Understand that. Shockingly enough. You really, from that elevation, you'd be looking at two signs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we're going back to the applicant to see if they want to rethink this a little bit. Maybe study another.
Yeah, I think we're looking at continuing.
Do you want us to kind of vote on it as is, or do you want us to continue it and come back next month with some changes?
I mean, is there one or the other that could be approved like here today? And then if there's one that you guys have an issue with, we could come back the following month or
I think we need to see them both together.
okay. So, I mean, is that the one causing the most issues with you guys, the box sign?
Yeah, my read is that it's all about the box sign right now. I think there's a consensus that the other sign is generally acceptable as, well, you want to move it left a bit, right, correct?
Well,
Or not?
yeah, okay, if we're talking about both sides, yeah, definitely moving it to the west, like you had suggested, that maybe just move it down, so it's more, maybe it's centered over the three other windows. But again, if you scale down the one on the corner, maybe that one being in that, closer maybe isn't so bad, so.
Okay, so that's, and then I suppose that's what I was looking at was, so we're looking at a scaled down sign on the 45-degree angle there. And if that's properly scaled down, then the sign as submitted is generally acceptable. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Stephanie, can you pull up the elevation that you had? Something that, yeah.
Yeah.
So the three middle windows that are shorter,
Mhm.
I mean, that would be another place is to align it there and center it, right? And that's what you had suggested before about moving it down. I don't know if you were moving it down that far, but I think that would be very appropriate. And then it kind of represents the entire scope of the building as opposed to just more towards the corner.
And I think for the box sign, I mean, I don't think we have an issue scaling it down. I understand where you guys are coming from, being a little bit of, so, yeah, I wouldn't think my client would have, you know, an issue with that if you guys, if that's a way to get this passed, I think they would be okay with that.
I don't think we can pass it.
We can't pass it without seeing it.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I was struggling a little bit with what the purpose of each sign really would be. And at first I wasn't really in agreement with what Kim was saying, scaling that down, but now I kind of get it because the brick sign can be seen from both directions on traffic. So it's not like it's facing one side and the other one's facing the other. That's the main sign. And then the box sign is really just marking a doorway. I think you want to leave your text there. I don't think you want to do just a logo because nobody's going to know really what that is except you. But maybe just shrinking it a little bit would make it scale better. So I think, yeah, and I think centering it over either the middle 3 windows or the other group of windows closer to the corner, one or the other would be fine.
Okay.
I think what we'd like to see too is that elevation right there with both signs on it. Okay, do we need a motion to continue? Okay, I move we continue the application.
Second,
We moved and seconded to continue the application. Stephanie, call the roll, please.
Mr. Curtis,
Approve.
Mr. Manfred,
Approved.
Mr. Wade,
yes.
Mr. Napi.
Approve.
Motion to continue carries.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next application is EF 2206003. Address is 245 South Skidmore Street. Carrick Sherrill Columbus Design LLC is the applicant. Jeff Mormon Finance Fund is the owner. Stephanie, staff report, please.
Sure, thank you. So I did want to note that the application materials for this one and the next one is the same set of materials, but I'll go through the staff report for the Skidmore project and any action to be taken, and then we'll do the other one separately in case there's any conditions on one and not. So the first one is EF 2206003 or 245 South Skidmore Street. The applicant is requesting review and action for a new 9-unit townhome development and surface parking lot within the Dodge Park subdistrict. The project would require lot combinations. The current proposal includes the following: 9 for-sale townhomes, spread apart by 2 buildings, with 1 building would have 5 units and 1 building would have 4 units. A mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms with 1 ADA unit. The units would feature front porches, energy efficient fixtures and appliances, as well as functional and durable materials. There will be a surface parking lot to be shared between the 2 buildings. There is a site constraint with the floodplain along Rich Street. This does require the lot combination of 6 parcels. The price point is to be determined, but they are using the affordable land trust model. The proposed parking setback from the west property line is 0 feet. The code establishes a 5-foot minimum, so a parking setback modification is being requested. The proposed front yard setback from the north property line is 57.6 feet. The code establishes a 10-foot maximum, so a front yard setback modification is also being requested. The application was heard conceptually at the April 2022 East Franklinton Review Board meeting. At that time, the board was generally uncomfortable with the setback from Ridge Street and requested the applicant conduct further investigation and provide additional information on what solutions had been explored to ensure that the site design as proposed is the best solution. The board was generally supportive of the architecture, but requested the eastern elevation of the Rich Street building should be redesigned to address Skidmore as well because of the proximity to that street frontage. Further, the board requested clarifications on some of the details at the entries and that the applicant explore options to make the units more unique. The applicant will return for approval of landscaping and lighting. The submittal includes existing condition photos, a site plan, lot combination plan, floor plans, elevations, and renderings. The proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan states that if infill development is at higher density than is recommended for the area, that a high level of design should be provided to minimize impact and increase compatibility. The recommended density for Dodge Park is 6 to 10 dwelling units an acre. The proposal is at 19 dwelling units an acre. While the density exceeds the plan recommendations, the design, materials, and massing as shown are appropriate for the surrounding neighborhood. Further, the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan recommends that buildings front the street and have direct access to public sidewalks. The project as presented is in line with these guidelines. The plan also recommends the inclusion of street trees in consultation with the city forester. While the East Franklinton District Code 3323 establishes a 10-foot maximum front yard setback, staff supports the proposed 57.6-foot setback from the Rich Street property line, as the applicant has demonstrated the floodplain creates an extenuating circumstance. However, staff does recommend the applicant pursue enhanced landscaping and design of this space to encourage usability as part of the landscaping submission. Staff is supportive of the proposal as presented. If approved, the board would be approving the following code development standard modifications: a parking setback modification to allow a decrease in parking setback from the west property line of 5 foot, and an increase in the front yard setbacks from the north property line of 47.6 foot. Staff recommends conditional approval, with the condition being that the applicant return for board approval of lighting and landscaping.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
How much interaction has staff had with the floodplain administrator?
Minimal. And by minimal, I mean none.
When you ask, when you recommend them come back for landscaping, I imagine you envision that as that green space, the 50-foot setback to the north. What do you envision seeing there? Just landscape design, or?
I don't think we have gone as far as to have a specific recommendation for that. The landscaping submission would also include any of the street trees, or if there's going to be landscaping in front of those front porches and things like that. So it was just our recommendation that we'll call it little park space at this point, be included as a part of the landscaping submission.
Well, I'm going to swear in the applicant at this point, so that you can add to the discussion. State your name, please, sir.
Eric Sherrill.
And you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
I certainly do.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add to the discussion regarding the green space. We have discussed as a development team and are fully prepared to engage a landscape designer, urban planner such as Edge to approach that green space in a manner that can be fruitful for creating a landscape space for the development, but also something that's welcoming to the public. And I mean, we want to create I don't think at this time that the development team wants to call this a public park or a pocket park or anything like that, but certainly something that will be inviting for the pedestrian to passerby to take part in, that would include landscaping and hardscaping. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a plan that needs to be developed. And I think that we would want to bring it back as a completely separate project on, from the north edge of that north sidewalk, to the public right of way as its own project.
Great. Do you have anything else to add to your?
I think other than that, I believe that we've addressed, the comments about the architecture. I completely agreed, with the comments, last time we visited about how the Rich Street fronting building, with its eastern face in its current position, in its setback position, becomes a building front rather than a building side. So we addressed that architecture, and kind of made it a corner building. And other than that, we addressed some other minor details and responded to staff with materials and additional information. So.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Sure. So I have a question about the handicap unit. Is there only one handicap unit for the whole thing, or is it per budget? Because you only show the handicap unit on the.
I think we have one handicap or one type A accessible unit on each project.
So I assume the one on the Skidmore, one would be that end unit right by the handicap parking space.
I believe so, yes.
That would make sense.
Yes.
And my follow-up question to that is, you don't show any kind of accessible ramps or anything to get into those units. And that would take some dimension and space, and probably more than you have there. So have you given any thought to that?
I think the intent there is to reduce the height above grade, in concert with providing some at grade elevation change. So it's not, I find in a development like this that ramps create separation and things like that. So I, typically try to avoid that as much as possible. So whether that, whether we can grade around that unit, or provide a small, low slope ramp to accommodate that, that would be the intent.
And that's the westernmost unit in the Romeo building, closest
Yeah.
to the accessible parking. That looks like it has 3 steps up to both doors.
Yeah, that's the comment, that they all show steps.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that.
Well, on the next page down, there's the handicap symbol on one of the units, and
Yeah.
there's not one on this one.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, I'm looking at it side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to refresh my memory with myself on where I planned on putting that, because I do show on sheet A01 the accessible unit being in the 4-unit townhome that faces Skidmore, rather than the 5-unit that faces Rich. But that's switched on the southern site. So I think regardless, the intent is to try to achieve accessibility to that unit without, switchback ramps.
Right. Well, and code's going to require it anyway, but I just wanted to, on the Grove Street Sullivan Avenue one, got the handicap space next to the unit, and that makes sense. Wanted to confirm that on the Skidmore, but I would be concerned if you were in the 4-unit building and had to get all the way over to that space. So
Right.
I would be concerned about that. And I had one other question, switching subjects. So you got that conversation I just.
Yes.
In the floodplain update narrative, talks about compensatory storage water volume. And it says it's difficult to do that because it's an urban infill site and not enough room to provide cut fill. Have you looked at putting an underground tank underneath the parking lot to accommodate that?
So the compensatory storage is in addition to the required stormwater storage on the site. So we have to, if we elevate the site by, 2,000 cubic yards, we also have to find 2,000 cubic yards to decrease the site in order to, so that we aren't basically flooding outside of what the existing floodplain is. And then on top of that, we also have to provide what would be required for the site for stormwater storage.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Can the two storage types just be one expanded upon the other? Do you increase the size of your normal stormwater detention? Would that be acceptable?
If it was above grade, potentially, however, it has to be outside of the floodplain area, so basically, there's really not enough room on the site to do both, things.
Unless you put in a really, really big tank underneath the parking.
And I'm not sure that underground stormwater storage, is sufficient or equals the compensatory storage. I'm not sure if that's a one-to-one. I know that you can obviously do that for the stormwater storage on site, but I don't know the answer to that question with regard to whether it equals the compensatory storage.
And
The crux of the issue though is that all of the engineering, all of the kind of X factors that are involved in this development, I think are what is driving the decision to just move forward outside of the floodplain, because there's so much money that will go into the investigation and the understanding and also into the time that it takes to do all those things. And it's still not a guaranteed solution.
I would just point out that putting tanks underground in an area that has hydrostatic pressure tends to make the tanks float, and then you got a whole other problem you have to solve. Having been through that before.
Sounds like a lesson learned.
Yes.
I think I understand the hardships that the floodplain is creating for you, and the narrative outlines that pretty well. As a one-off development, it makes sense. Your proposal makes sense. The last month we had the neighbor just to your north present a plan to build a single-family home on a crawl space with flood vents, and at the time they were under the impression that that would be satisfactory, and then they wrote a letter actually to the Franklinton Area Commission just last week or the week before, outlining their battle with the city flood administrator that's been 8 months long. And this issue affects like over 200 lots, vacant lots in Franklinton. And there needs to be a better solution to it. And so it was my hope that with the land bank involved in these two projects, that could help spur some change to make these sites easier to develop. But it sounds like even her plan to build on a crawl space with flood vents is going to require all of that compensatory storage, because FEMA's definition of fill is different than the city of Columbus's definition of fill. Her plan would have been fine with FEMA, but not fine with the city of Columbus.
And that's kind of been a little bit of our experience, is that there's a number of agencies obviously that we're dealing with to solve the problem, or I guess even arrive at a solution, and they tend to be at odds with each other. So, we have an opportunity in this particular development to build our program outside of the floodplain. Obviously, that's not an option for every lot of those 200 lots. But I think for this one, it's a reasonable solution. I think that the the design intent of the green space in front of that building could really be an asset to the development in the community. So I think in this particular, one-off instance, the solution of avoiding the floodplain, it makes the most sense.
I don't disagree with that. I'm going to take the opportunity to ask you questions about the situation because you've been through this. Because I think you've gained a lot of knowledge that could be helpful maybe in directing other future sites.
I will answer what questions I can, but I am just reporting the experience that my civil engineer and ownership team have gone through. I wasn't directly present for all of the discussion.
Fair enough. I really just have two. So the other applicant next to you thought the building it on a crawl space would work because it would allow water to flow under. Did you think about that approach or run into any roadblocks with that approach?
We discussed that as an option to put, to make this a first floor garage type podium building, and to do, flat style condominiums above that podium in order to address the floodplain. I think that idea was quickly put to bed because the land trust has yet to figure out the law between, or the laws and things involved in the land trust maintaining ownership of the ground while creating the condominiums. The townhome solution condominium style is kind of a much easier condominium document than the parcels above grade. So, we moved through that. We did discuss, coastal style projects where, we're building homes on stilts, whether that's because it's completely above grade and housing something underneath, or whether it's a crawl space. In this situation, I think the affordability aspect, as well as the mass relationship to the adjacent buildings was kind of something that we considered. We, wanted to kind of stick to a 2-story building rather than a 3-story building. We brainstormed a few other solutions. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but those were the two kind of most widely discussed as potentials.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And the last question I had was, in theory, if you could fit the compensatory storage on site, where would that have to drain to?
My understanding is it has to be connected to the floodplain. So, we would basically be carving ground out of the backside along the alley at the same base flood elevation as the current edge of the floodplain. So it basically drained back into the floodplain.
So not like underground to storm sewer or anything like that. Is that in line with what you thought, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Phew.
I guess I have 3 questions. One just got brought up by Chris. How permanent are these flood lines? Do they move occasionally? If the city provides infrastructure in the future, will this flood line change a little bit? Can it change?
So the interesting thing about this particular flood, I'm going to call it a pocket, is that it's served by a pump station. So, basically, this flood pocket is happening because or would only happen in a complete failure of the pump station. And I guess that according to the floodplain coordinator, that potential exists. Or, you know, it's a non-zero possibility. That's kind of getting beyond my engineering understanding.
My lead-in question was then, you're combining six parcels here, but the northernmost parcel is not part of your project anymore. It's now green space. Would there be a possibility of combining 5 parcels and leaving that parcel? I mean, there's a good benefit or not benefit of keeping it as part of the project. If it's part of the project, they're responsible for landscaping it. If it's not part of the project and the city owns it, then it's gonna stay barren forever.
So
I guess, but
we
a
just-
single family house or some other project in the future may be able to go there. However, if that was the case, it changes the architecture of your building, which now faces, you know, does that?
And I think that was the result of the discussion, because I think that maybe you weren't here for the last time that we visited. And a couple of commissioners discussed that option. And then we would end up with a building in the exact same position, except we would be seeing the side of it from Rich, because it would be designed with the understanding that at some point in the future, there could be another building there. So it would not be a Rich Street facing architectural style. It would be a building that was designed to front. I mean, the site would be designed to front, you know, other directions rather than Rich. And for the foreseeable future, we would be seeing the side of a building from Rich in a large setback rather than the front of the building. And I think that the result of that discussion was that it was preferable to see the front of the building.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think that leads me to my next comment of, I'm going to be very interested in how we design and develop this green space, because it's going to be here forever. And it is going to be very important from a neighborhood standpoint, from a drive landscape standpoint. It is, I mean, this is one of the main entrance and exit points of East Franklinton. And I think having a bench and some trees in there is not gonna cut it. I think it would be nice to pull in some art if possible, and whether you could tie in the Columbus, you know, arts and see if we can get a sculptor or something else into this space, or design, we have the ability here to make this kind of a really nice green space. And I would kind of, for your future meeting coming back for landscaping, personally, I'm gonna be pretty particular about what goes here, because I think there's a great opportunity with this, from this floodplain challenge.
So,
And I think the development team completely agrees with you, that green space should have nodes of public use and nodes of private use, and then ways to intermingle them, that are again beyond, you know, a hardscape circle with 2 benches and, you know, some lawn and a couple of bushes. So I think
Do you think
that,
John Turner would be amenable to the possibility of not charging for this unbuildable parcel, and you could take the you know, some of the money that you would spend purchasing the parcel into public and private park space there, the green space that's there?
I don't think that has been a topic of concern from the development team side, so.
so the outcome of the meeting last week with a parcel adjacent to it, was it conclusive about whether that site was developable or not?
Well, I guess we gave it,
We approved it, and they, at the time, acted as if it could be, but then the communication that was sent to the area commission last week would indicate that it might not actually be moving forward.
So I was gonna just piggyback on this conversation and say if that parcel isn't developable, also that we have a full block linear park that could be designed. And obviously that's not your, but if there could, and it's the landowner's the same, right? It's land bank.
I guess that's true.
So
Yeah.
could there be
Their
a
sale is dependent on being able to build a house.
Yeah.
So they haven't bought it from the land bank yet.
right? So I'm saying, maybe there's a bigger strategy of that this block along it, that it becomes this interesting little linear park. That it's kind of like a little gateway park as you come in. I mean, there's precedents all over for buildings being set back with preserving green space in front of them. In Bexley, I'm working on a project right now that has some apartments that are like that. It's beautiful, right? It creates a nice setback. So I mean, I just want to think, if this is going to be a challenge for more than just this site, I'd like to see, hopefully the city think bigger about what it could be. I don't want to lose that opportunity because it's always there, but.
The project from last month was not the corner parcel, it was actually one south of
They were,
that.
they were one south.
Yeah, so there is the corner parcel that I think someone is also attempting to build a house. That one has not come to EFRB yet,
That
but
one is also a land bank project.
yes, yeah.
So it's the same issue.
So it's really kind of like an L shape of properties because it goes a little bit further down
Yeah,
on that side.
Because the floodplain, it bends the corner, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying,
I think that's a great point.
let's not piecemeal it, let's think big if we can, and because the land bank owns it, maybe there's a bigger play. Obviously, we could just do this part as phase one, but I think if it had a design for the whole thing.
When we engage the landscape designer for this, I will discuss that with my client. I would imagine that the cost of schematic thought processes for our parcel, in addition to what's on the other land bank parcels across the street, would be minimal. So, we could probably come up with at least a schematic level design plan for what you're talking about.
Which would be basically a logical thinking about the whole thing, but your piece could stand alone and still.
Right,
That's what I'm
yes,
saying, right?
somewhat phased, but globally schematic.
I don't think the homeowner is ready to give up the fight, though.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to like bank on it, but I just like to put that thinking out there that, because oftentimes opportunities are lost like that where, oh, well, if I had known you wanted, it was going to be a park, we would have thought different.
The only other, on page 11, my only architectural comment is I appreciate that you changed that the east side of the Skidmore elevation, the kind of the bottom left down there. I think I would recommend, looks like the second floor, the lower left here, that southern side of the east elevation there is a bedroom on the second floor and laundry on the first floor. I feel like that section could use a window on in each area there. That would be my only architectural. And that, because that wraparound front isn't on the southern portion of your project, that's the only location where I feel like Skidmore elevation could use two windows there.
Yeah, like a half, like a square window.
Half or
Yep.
two-thirds
Yep.
style on the first floor and a full window on the second floor.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I just want to mention that the other sites are divided by an alley. So you could have an alley running through that combined park if it were to come to fruition. And we're also less than a block from Dodge Park, so the big park's not. But I do like the public art. That would be a very cool addition. So
I think,
I would reiterate that.
yes, there's Dodge Park, but, I've spent a lot of time thinking about East Franklinton, and there's not a lot of open space. I think the idea of pocket parks in a community like this are really important, and certainly Dodge Park played a huge part of this community, but I don't have a problem with introducing the idea of pocket parks. I think it just helps to create place in a community that doesn't really have place.
You know, I mean, just, this isn't for me to provide any comment about this particular project, but I work in these urban areas quite a bit that are seeing denser and denser, larger footprints on smaller lots. And I know that the market is really moving towards, you know, homes that don't have yards and but those folks still want to be able to walk to us, a small little area that's outdoors. And so conceiving of smaller, of more numerous but smaller areas of green space, I think it is not a waste of time.
And yeah, so thank you for opening that door. Because I did want to make the point that there are two smaller green spaces on each one of them that, you know, as part of the landscape plan, those should have purpose too, maybe a lot more private.
Yes.
People that live there.
Yeah.
And on the Skidmore one, that, again, that handicap space has to be, it's doing a lot of really bad things right now, so it needs to have some love and attention to it. The way that it overlaps with the walkway, which means you'd be striping the walk. You'd have to by code, I think, and just if that handicap space can slide away from the walk.
Sure.
And then thinking about how that green space to the north of it, that becomes something for that little cluster of units. And we're not proving any landscape today because there's stuff shown on this plan I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right.
The staff's recommendation is conditional that they come back for landscaping and lighting. And if we want to, you know, just assume that this green space, this large green space along Rich will continue to be a part of this project. And then as we get towards the landscaping submission, if it turns out that it needs to be something separate or it's going to be a different land bank project, we can deal with separating out then. I think it makes, to the point a few minutes ago, keeping it in there for now, I think makes sense. So.
Okay, TJ, you had mentioned the possibility of putting additional windows in on one of the elevations. I believe that would require a condition for approval, correct?
Do you guys feel strongly?
I think it's a good suggestion. Carrick, do you have any concerns
I
with
don't
that?
have any concerns with that condition.
I don't.
Does the ADA parking spot on that north side that overlaps the walkway, is that considered, are we considering that landscaping that they would need to come back in for?
That's probably,
No, that I would say that's part of the site plan.
yeah, so I think, I mean, isn't code going to pick up some of those issues related to handicap access and all that?
Yes.
So I just don't like the way that it overlaps with the sidewalk, because that would have to be striped yellow or whatever they white or whatever they do for those side parts of it. I don't think that's important. So I guess we have to put that as conditional that has to move.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, I don't necessarily love the idea of putting ramps on both sides of it. I think there should be a better architectural way to get rid of the steps if those are needed. Now, that's a 2-story unit. So these are for sale product. I don't know if they're for sale product if they need to be type A units.
That's correct.
They do not.
No, there isn't any requirement to provide type A units in these
So
developments.
you can have steps to walk up to any of the units. You don't have to have any that are type A.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's the desire of the nonprofit affordable housing developer that we provide additional or higher levels of accessibility for the first floor of the townhome that we're designating as accessible. But you're correct. It's not a truly, you know, fully accessible ANCA unit on both floors.
I'd like to not see a ramp
Yeah.
if possible. And I don't know if that means dropping that finished floor in that unit?
Yes, I think that there's definitely, that's part of the solution. Part of the solution is also the civil grading, which is just, we don't have a full 100% topography survey yet. That's in process. So, those things were in my mind kind of waiting till we get that information, because a couple feet of fall across this site can obviously cause a great deal of difference for the accessibility of each particular unit.
And to add, I mean, so you're not showing any ramps right now, right, on here, so
That's correct.
you're just saying you don't want to see them.
Yeah, I mean, I
If
think
there's other.
if we're approving this and then there's a 4-foot wide by 16-foot ramp that has to kind of get jammed in somewhere, I don't think that's ideal from an aesthetic standpoint. If they can step the slab and lower the ADA units, or come up with another grading solution to have an ADA access, I would think that could be staff approved. If they can't, and there's something a little more dramatic that needs to be done architecturally, then I would say that we shouldn't have that staff approved, and that should come back from.
If it dramatically changes the site plan, because you have to have this long ramp to get to the, sure. And then another thing, Eric, you mentioned that this submittal currently doesn't show the accessible unit. The symbol is not there on the property we'll flip over to next. And I'm looking back at last month's material, the accessible unit was, for this property, was actually it was the northern unit on the Skidmore frontage. So just for the board's clarification, that as long as what comes back to us remains an accessible unit on each property, is it an issue which unit that is? Or is that something that, I mean, they're coming to us saying there will be one accessible unit. It's just, it seems to have flipped a little bit from the last time, so I don't want it to have to come.
Yeah,
back
and I think that,
space on the site plan.
and I think that in my brain, I mean, now that I'm kind of remembering the long sidewalk from the accessible parking space to near the rear of that of the unit that's marked on sheet A01, offered an opportunity to grade a low slope sidewalk to the back of that unit.
So the image on the screen now is last month's, showing that
Right.
the unit was going to be that northernmost unit on the Skidmore building, as
Yep.
opposed to in the Rich Street building.
But again, I think the topography of the project is gonna drive, but I think the condition should be that if there is a 1 to 12 ramp shown that's beyond the allowable 1 to 50 sidewalk slope, that we would bring the site plan back. That makes sense.
So you're trying to use the sidewalk as the ramp to get up to that unit?
I'm trying to use the potential for natural grading
Right.
to resolve the issue, yes.
I just worry about it's the length, it's the distance. You're asking people that have mobility issues to go, pretty far from where they park, so. And one other just really big thing is that on the site plans that are in this package, it doesn't show me walks from the steps to the sidewalk. There's no walkways except on the ones that face on Ridge. I assume there's going to be a sidewalk from the steps to the
Yes,
public sidewalk, right?
yes.
I just have to say that because we're
Do we
approving
want
it.
to approve the architecture and massing of the buildings so that they can move forward with more serious designs with that, but come back for site plan? And lighting and landscaping?
What changes are we looking at for the site plan?
Just final.
I think these are all minor things. I think can be fixed maybe. I don't know if we have to hold it up for that.
So just to summarize the changes we're talking about, adding 2 windows to the
North
eastern,
townhome building on the east elevation.
yes. And then, we're talking about making sure there are sidewalks from the units to the public sidewalk, right? And then the accessibility situation.
Well, there's 2 issues. One is the location of the ADA parking space in relationship to the sidewalk, and then there's the accessibility into the units, the accessible units.
Which, to the applicant's point, aren't required. So if
Right,
they're
right.
not required to have to have ADA compliant type A units, then they're doing it out of their own.
And I was originally just asking the question because I didn't see it, but if that's the case, then, yeah.
Okay, so really, for the accessibility, the condition would be that that parking space be shifted off of that rear sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Like the one on the other site.
Stephanie, you want to repeat those conditions now that we've got it?
Certainly. So we have the condition that the applicant will return to the board for approval of lighting and landscaping. And there are also the conditions that the applicant will add 2 windows to the Rich Street building's east elevation. And that there will be sidewalks added from the units to the public sidewalk for the Skidmore building. And that the location of the accessible parking space be relocated off of the rear sidewalk.
The sidewalk comment should be for all buildings. The southern portion, or are we, this is just for the northern portion because we split these 2?
Yes, yeah, so this is just for the Skidmore Rich set of buildings.
Hopefully the next project will go a little easier.
We're considering both projects right now.
The first one that we would be
Okay, so we're
making a motion on would be on the
Okay, all right, so this is the first application.
Yes.
Very good. I move we approve the application with the conditions as set forth by staff. And further condition would be that the applicant return to the board for board approval of lighting and landscaping.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve subject to stated conditions. Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfred,
Approve.
Mr. White,
Approved.
and Mr. Nuppy.
Approved.
Motion carries.
Let's move on
Can I make
to the other building.
a motion on the other building, or we?
Well, let me read it into the record and we can,
I have a separate staff report for that one because there is a demolition component.
okay, very good. Well, let's get going then. Next application associated with the former is EF 2206-004. Address is 638 Sullivan Avenue. Carrick Sherrill and Columbus Design LLC is the applicant. Jeff Mormon Finance Fund is the owner. If you have a staff report, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. EF 2206-004 for 638 Sullivan Avenue. The applicant is requesting review and action for a new 10-unit townhome development and surface parking lot within the Dodge Park subdistrict. The project would require lot combinations and a demolition of an existing building. The current proposal includes the following: 10 for-sale townhomes, 2 buildings, both would have 5 units each. It would be a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms with 1 ADA unit. Units would feature front porches, energy-efficient fixtures and appliances, and functional durable materials. There will be a surface parking lot to be shared between both buildings. They are proposing the demolition of the existing 1972 building. There would be a lot combination of 2 parcels, price point to be determined, but using the affordable land trust model. A proposed parking setback from the west property line is 0 foot. The code establishes a 5-foot minimum. A parking setback modification is being requested. The application was heard conceptually at the April 2022 EFRB meeting. At that time, the board expressed general support for the proposed demolition and architecture, requesting some clarification on details at the entries and for the applicant to explore options to make the units more unique. The applicant will return for approval of the lighting and landscaping. The submittal includes existing condition photos, a site plan, lot combination plan, floor plans, elevations, renderings, and material cut sheets. The proposal is consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan states that if infill development is at a higher density than is recommended for the area, that a high level of design should be provided to minimize impact and increase compatibility. The recommended density for Dodge Park is 6 to 10 dwelling units an acre. The proposal as presented is 26 dwelling units an acre. While density exceeds the plan recommendations, the design, materials, and massing as shown are appropriate for the surrounding neighborhood. Further, the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan recommends that buildings front the street have direct access to public sidewalks. The plan as presented is in line with these guidelines. The plan also recommends preservation of historic buildings where possible. While the applicant is proposing to demolish the existing building at 638 Sullivan, staff has determined the building is not eligible for a historic register due to extensive alterations over time. Further, the plan also recommends the inclusion of street trees in consultation with the city forester. Staff is supportive of the proposal as presented. A parking setback modification to allow a decrease in parking setback from the west property line of 5 foot. Staff is recommending conditional approval. Applicant to return for board approval of lighting and landscaping being those conditions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? If not, like to,
I don't have anything to add. I think we've discussed this horse.
you'll beat this horse to death, didn't we? Okay. Any questions for the applicant, comments? TJ, you would,
Well, I started looking at it again, I have another question. On the site plan, page 6, the unit on the north is the Tango, 5 units, but the floor plan for the Tango is only 4 units. In the southern building, Romeo, I imagine is a mirror image of the Romeo that you have the floor plans. But you're also showing 4 patios across the front instead of the 3 larger patios. And that just may be a holdover from an earlier site plan.
Yeah, that building facing, I apologize, that building facing Rob would be the Sierra floor plan. It's labeled incorrectly. Wait. The building's flip-flopped.
Yeah, and I'm just now noticing that the one we just approved is labeled Sierra.
Has the same flip-flop.
Sierra should be the Tango.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those names just flip-flop on the site plan. Okay, that makes sense.
Can we, just to clarify, so when this comes in, so the Sierra floor plan is supposed to be the Skidmore building?
I think that the 2 buildings on the site plans, the names Tango and Sierra were swapped. So Tango should be on the north.
So just the name?
Just the
the
names
floor
on the
plans are-
buildings.
Okay.
Yep.
And then on this site, the Romeo site plan shows the incorrect front porches as well. Other than that, those are kind of clerical issues. I don't have any issues with this one.
anybody else want to entertain motion?
Sorry, question is, do we want to add the comment of the windows on the building that would be at the corner of Sullivan and Road. Those two windows, we have it.
The condition on the east or the, yeah, it would be the grub elevation.
So what is the room? What is that space? Is it a laundry room on the first floor and a bedroom on the second floor?
Yes,
Right, so- and that's the same condition in the one we.
yep, it's the same condition. It's just mirrored in this particular site.
Somebody will curse us for not having any blank wall space to put in restaurant.
Yeah, I didn't catch it because the
Or a bed.
labels and the elevations are different. But yes, if it's the same elevation and same design issue right there on Grove Street as it was, I would say that we would
Yes,
recommend the addition of the two windows.
yep,
It's definitely a good catch. So move to approve as submitted with the addition of two windows, the Grub Street elevation of the Romeo building, and to come back for additional approval of site lighting and landscape.
Need to add the sidewalks.
And that we also additionally need to show on the site plan sidewalks from any entrances to existing public sidewalks.
We have a second.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application, subject to the stated conditions. Stephanie, call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfred, Mr. Witt,
Approved.
Mr. Naughton.
Approved.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Okay. The application for today is EF 2206005. Address is 617 West State Street. The applicant is Kevin Kindy of Triad Architects, and the owner is United Schools Network. Staff report, please.
Is EF 2206005, 617 West State Street. It's the site of the U Prep State Street School in the Dodge Park Subdistrict. The applicant is seeking review and approval for demolition and site modifications. The applicant is proposing to repurpose a portion of the existing asphalt play surface in order to create additional off-street parking spaces. The proposal requires the demolition of an existing storage shed and restriping. The applicant is also proposing new 4-foot chain link fence to match existing on the eastern edge of the parking lot to separate parking from the playground area. No additional asphalt or new curb cuts are required. The proposed alterations will result in an increase from 13 to 22 spaces, an increase of 9 spaces. A site development standard modification to the parking lot setback would be required from the west and south property lines to legitimize the existing condition, which is 0 foot. The submittal includes a site plan and existing condition photographs. The proposal is somewhat consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. Plan recommends parking be located to the rear or side of buildings and screened per code. Parking is appropriately located, but the applicant is not proposing any screening besides the existing chain link fence. Further, the plan recommends that dumpsters have full height screening. No dumpster screening is being proposed. The plan also recommends the inclusion of street trees along all public streets. While staff knows the applicant is proposing minor changes to existing conditions, staff recommends the applicant provide screening for the dumpster. Further, staff encourages the applicant to include additional landscaping between the existing chain link fence and the right-of-way as screening along the western and southern perimeters of the parking lot. Finally, the applicant should consider an additional street tree along West Chapel Street in consultation with the city forester. If approved, the board would be approving the following code development standard modifications to legitimize existing conditions. A parking setback modification to allow a decrease in parking setback from the south and west property lines of 5 foot, from 5 foot to 0 foot. Staff is recommending conditional approval, with the conditions being providing full height dumpster screening per plan recommendation and working with the city forester to add a street tree as appropriate on West Chapel.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this one?
The existing tree in the corner, is that staying?
Yes.
Do we have an existing condition? What it looks like now? Like in plan, like a site plan?
No.
We're just trying to figure
I
out,
could basically describe it for you.
is it, because it's kind of like this now, isn't it?
Exactly. Do you mean it's not in the swearing?
Oh, yeah.
There you are, right, okay. All right, well, let's do that. Applicant, state your name for the record, please.
Sure. Kevin Kindy from Triad Architects.
You, and you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
Yep.
Now you can ask your questions.
Yeah, to answer your question, if you look at the site plan, I forget how many there are, that she said is on the left or the west side of the parking lot. Those are what's existing. So there's a fence right now separating that eastern edge of the parking lot from the asphalt play surface. So we're just kind of moving that line over to pick up 9 more spaces.
So you have set a fence line that separates the parking from the play area.
Correct.
And we've seen this project before, right?
Yeah, so a number of years ago, we came, it doesn't show in that aerial view, but we came a number of years ago because the school acquired that gym building in the
Right.
building roof to the east. And we came through here to get a connector. There's a building addition that basically connects those two buildings. So that was the last time we were here for this property.
So has the school improved then the playground that's on the other side of the fence, or what's that condition now? It's not that, is it? It's not, that is asphalt.
Yeah, it's so what you can't, I guess, quite tell from this aerial view is so there's the multi-play surface in the bottom right. Yeah, so that area, that was, I think, during construction of our last project. So those are all contractor cars parked there. Otherwise, that is all asphalt play surface. It's we get further over the west where the existing parking is. Yeah, so that fence line right here that runs north-south. Yep, that's the existing differentiation between parking and place it.
So right now you drive in off of South Rub and there's just one row of parking. Is that what it is?
That's correct, yeah. So I think when we came here a number of years ago for that last building addition, I believe one of the conditions or special approvals that we had to get was for the quantity of parking. Because we just couldn't quite get it then. So this helps us get closer, I think, to the required number. I still don't think we quite get to meeting code, but closer.
And this one does get a little wonky since we're not approving quantity of parking spaces anymore. So really what they're looking for from the EFRB is approval to demo that shed, which does not require a permit per my conversation with BZS. But what they really need from us is, it's a zoning clearance requirement because they're changing the circulation. So it would be basically just approving the site plan showing, kind of how you drive around the parking lot now, which would require demolition of that shed.
Which is, I mean, obviously you're trying to bring a lot to a small area. So, I mean, the circulation is kind of really non-intuitive. And if you can't find a space, you have to go back out of the chapel and then go back to the Rub and then come back in. You can't like circulate through the parking lot.
That's true, but I would say this parking is primarily just for staff.
Right.
All the visitor parking happens typically out on State Street, because that's where the front door is.
So they kind of figure it out, like, if I don't get a spot now.
Yeah, because the problem now is there's not enough parking there for all the staff, so some staff park on the street, so they're just trying to add more staff parking.
I was just, the reason I was asking the question about the fence line is like, if you move the fence over 20 feet, you could actually head parking in and kind of spread that parking out just a little bit, make it more functional. That's what, but
Spread it to the east, you're saying?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I think the trade-off is just losing more playground area. I know when we brought that previous project here, I think we talked about basically a scenario exactly like we have now. And at that time, this school didn't want to give up any of that playground. I think because they've added that gym, they've maybe realized they don't need as much outdoor play surface as what they have. So now they're willing to give up more parking.
And the dumpster doesn't, I mean, you have to basically, I don't know how a dumpster thing would come in, and I don't know how they operate now, what kind of vehicle it is, but if they head it, you can't head into it because you're going the wrong way. They probably go in backwards. They would just violate the flow and.
Yeah, I mean, typically, I know operationally, the truck usually comes at like 3 or 4 in the morning. There's not cars there. But yeah, it would have to basically come in on that west side, turn right, pick it up that way, and then head backwards.
And was there any concern, because it's already, the driveway that close to the intersection? I guess I'm going back to staff. Did anybody at the city have any issues? It's already there, right? But if you're reconfiguring it, it gives you the opportunity to move the curb cut to the east and get it away from the intersection.
Right, yeah, I think kind of a downfall of just kind of the flow of these projects is that after it goes through site compliance.
Yeah.
So, I, do not believe, you're correct that it is existing. I have not specifically reached out to public service to say, do you want them to remove it? Public service will look at it, certainly, for the flow and things like that. So, I mean, hypothetically, you could get site compliance and they could say, with this drive access, and then it would have to come back.
And it wouldn't really change the flow. You're just moving the exit over because both aisles come to the south and you're just shifting the exit over so everybody would flow like that. I can't, it's already there, so I guess we can't really.
Okay,
I inherently don't love approving chain link fence. It is what is there currently, so they're kind of matching what is already throughout the site around the exterior. So I mean, I guess I don't really have a problem with it. It's a cost-effective solution to what they're trying to do with keeping children's playground away from the parking lot. And it's already existing throughout there. I guess you get into if site compliance makes them move the drive lane and there's more expensive project. Right now, they're trying to do things as cheaply as possible, which I understand. So I think I just kind of let that go as a pass, but do we set any precedents by?
So
Okay.
they're not moving it, right? This is the
That's-
existing chain link fence.
Correct, and that was the conversation we as staff had was, similar to the school on Broad from last month, whereas they were replacing the fence, that's where we kind of took a little bit of a harder line, since they're not doing anything with this fence. And that's where the recommendation for the screening was just an encourage.
Yeah.
Because, if they were replacing the fence, then there might be opportunity to adjust and add that screening or a different type of fence, but.
Okay.
So there is precedent, there is precedent for that.
The
So-
fencing was kind of included in the application, so my mistake.
so we're treating it akin to a non-conforming use then.
There is new fencing gonna
Yeah.
separate the playground,
There
right?
is new
There's
fencing.
one wall of new fencing.
Yes,
Inside the park.
Yes, and the reason we were okay with that being chain link is because chain link is existing and it's interior to the site. Like I said, had they said we want to replace all of this parking lot fencing with chain link, that would have been a different staff comment.
400 West Ridge has chain link fence along it, always had, and there was some improvements on that area. We allowed them to keep the existing chain link fence.
Keep it, yeah.
So just means it was there. And I think this is actually in better shape than that chain link fence.
So last thing here, staff recommended conditions are to provide full height dumpster screening, and work with the city forester to add a street tree. Everyone in agreement on that? And with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
With conditions?
staff condition to screen the dumpster enclosure. And to work with the city forester on the feasibility of adding a tree.
Yeah, because I was gonna comment that that basically everything between the street and our fence, like everything's paved, so.
Most likely the forester is going to tell you a tree will not survive there or thrive there.
Yeah.
I think as part of this, as part of the
Part of the process.
site compliance,
Okay.
you're gonna have to talk to them anyway.
Got it.
The tree in the corner looks like it's covered with asphalt.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that that was alive. I don't
Could,
even.
could we make that can we remove the asphalt from around the tree and open it back up? I don't, that might do more damage than it's surviving right now.
Leave well enough alone, right?
It's a mighty tree. Okay.
Okay, so it has been moved to approve the application with the staff recommended conditions that the applicant provide full height dumpster screening per plan recommendations and work with the city forester to add a street tree as appropriate on West Chapel Street. Has been moved and seconded. Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Manfred,
Approved.
Mr. White,
Approved.
and Mr. Knopf.
Approved.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
And with that, we do stand adjourned.
I just, something just struck in my mind. I just wanted, Stephanie, the last application where there was demolition, did we cover that language? I'm just trying to think back to the language that we used.
Are you talking about the,
We approved their application with only the other conditions.
But there was a demolition as part of that.
are you talking about the Sullivan, when we just talked about it?
This whole.
So,
Yeah, and we didn't have to make a condition because that's part of the.
No, yeah.
That's
Since it
all I
was
wanted.
part of- Yeah, so it was a part of the application, it doesn't have.
yeah, so I'm used to demolitions coming to us separately and maybe
Yeah.
like separately. So that was just all.
As far as I know, nothing built in 1972 would be historic preservation. So,
Okay. Thank you. That's all I got. So you can adjourn us.
okay, we do stand adjourned. Our next meeting is Wednesday, July 27, 2022. Same time, same place.
When is my last? Is it next month?